Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. I'm your host. You remember MP Blakey from the NDP party that took a run at the Conservatives because he was so angry at them. And then when they called him out on it, when they said that that was unacceptable language, he stood up and promptly resigned so that he could, quote unquote, go into provincial politics and help Wab Canoe and steer Manitoba into such and such and such and such a direction. So his seat being vacated is coming up for a by-election, just like the one that was in Toronto. And the Conservatives have finally picked a running person for that. They, of course, haven't announced the date of the election just yet, but it seems that we have at least 3 people ready to go. Like we have a Liberal, an NDP, and a Conservative now. I don't know what other parties will be throwing a hat into it, but we'll cover that in a second. The federal Liberals, in their insistent desire to humiliate Canadians, have gone hat in hand begging the Chinese to talk to them and to be nice to them, even though the Chinese imprisoned 2 Canadians unjustly, even though the Chinese are completely and totally involved in human rights violations. Not only did the Foreign Affairs Minister speak to China over this matter, she actually did it on Chinese territory. So that's coming up. Retail sales are down, which is an indication that people are not spending money, which of course will have a very strong impact on the economy. And the government has finally got all of the grocery stores to sign on to the grocery store code of conduct, and it's only going to cost the Canadian taxpayers to start $1.5 million. All that's coming up. You'll want to stick around to the end. However, before I do that, I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with all of your socials. I have an open GoFundMe, and I have memberships. Okay, so like I was saying, the Conservatives have chosen a union member to go after the blue-collar vote in upcoming Elmwood-Transcona by-election, which is what MP Blakey had vacated. The federal Conservatives have picked an electrician who calls himself a proud union member to run for the party in a working-class Winnipeg riding. Colin Reynolds will represent the Conservatives in the upcoming by-election in Elmwood-Strathcona, a seat known for its blue-collar roots. That's a good idea. We saw the NDP lady, and she really wasn't. I mean, I didn't get a really strong feeling for her. I appreciate that, it's only one seat, but every vote counts, right? And any vote that we can take away from the NDP party that supports the Liberal tyranny, will be a victory for democracy. It says in a video on X, posted on social media Friday, Reynolds said that he's a construction electrician and a proud member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers and the local 2085. So that's a good job, and he has a good skill, and he has logic, and he can do math, and he, in all likelihood, has a lot of ties to the neighborhood. And hopefully they can make this election go quickly, and the Conservatives can win yet another seat. Because if that would be 2 by-elections, that would add to 2 Conservative votes and take 2 votes away from the NDP Liberal coalition. And let's be honest, taking 2 seats away from the Liberal coalition will be very helpful when you consider that they do things like shake hands with Hamas leaders and they shake hands with the foreign minister of China. Canada and China pledged to mend relations after foreign affairs ministers meet in Beijing. So they didn't meet in neutral territory. They didn't meet in Hawaii. They didn't meet anywhere like, no, she went to them. Jolie went right over to them. Isn't that great for a Canadian? How does that look for our prestige? Canada and China pledged to advance relations in pragmatic manner on Friday as the 2 countries move to stabilize bilateral ties following more than 6 years of frosty relations over the imprisonment of 2 Canadian citizens. Frosty relations over the imprisonment of 2 Canadian citizens after Canada held a person for the United States to come and pick them up, and then that got all changed around because the far left took over on all of our governments. And even though the lady was sent out of the country, they held on to these 2 guys, and then the federal government paid them money. However, I just think that to make any kind of concession to a country with such horrible human rights flies completely and 100% in the face of everything that the Liberals claim to stand for. You have people who are being forced into labor for next to no money to make products that are being sold for hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars around the world. I mean, when you think about the idea that you can make something in China, put it on a boat, sail it to North America and sell it for $1, can you appreciate how little the labor is getting paid in that country? That's not to mention the other human rights violations as it pertains to Christians, as it pertains to other religious groups, because communism can't have any religion. Like they target people who are religious. So I don't necessarily think that this is a good look for Canada. And I get that maybe you want to have cheap products and all that kind of stuff, but it's time that we just started to practice what we preach, right? If you want me to believe that we're supposed to be all about the environment and all about doing this and all about doing that, like the liberal message is always constantly talking about, if you want me to believe that we need to be spending billions of dollars in Ukraine because we're standing up to the big bad guy, then why are we not standing up to China? Why are we not bringing home our industry here? Why are we not doing things here so that we can control how clean it is, so that we can control how the garbage is taken care of it, so it's not dumped into the river, it's not dumped into the land, it's looked after, it's done properly. And sure, it might mean the end of the dollar store, it might mean that it'll have to change to the $5 store, but so what? We will be doing so and looking really proud to the rest of the world, right? Isn't that what you're talking about when you talk about the carbon tax, when you talk about shipping money off to the International Monetary Fund? I just really feel like if the Liberals want to, on the international market, look like they're being consistent, then they should stick to their guns. They should practice what they preach. They should get their story straight and stick to it. But instead, they have decided to capitulate to China, go over to China and say, oh, let's all get together and, sing Kumbaya, while the Chinese government suppresses Christians, for example, and other things. But I'm just saying that as one example. So there was a meeting with in the Yukon with the agriculture minister, Lawrence MacAulay, and he made a big announcement, but the recording was so terrible and the sound was so bad that I didn't want to make any video out of it. I just thought I would take the article and fill you all in. Remember now that one of the pillars of the Liberal Party is to try and get all of the grocery people to sign the code of conduct, which will imply that they will somehow, I don't know what it's supposed to do. I suppose it's supposed to allow people to go to them to complain. But so long as there's a massive monopoly on the food in this country, so long as we allow the Liberal government to attack farms and to attack open farmers markets, we're never going to get any control of the food prices. As long as the federal government is attacking carbon tax, there's never going to be any justice given to the Canadian people. We have to be able to remove giving our money to them so that they will bring the prices down in an effort to entice us to come back to their store. They have to be in competition, not in unison. However, they've signed this, I don't even know what they're calling it, the Grocery Code of Conduct, and to signify how great of an idea this is, the federal government is going to give these $5-6 billion international corporations $1.2 million to get the whole thing started so that they can start a adjudication. The federal agriculture minister, Lawrence MacAulay, says the government, along with the provinces and the territories, will provide $1.2 million in one-time funding to support the creation of an office that will oversee the Grocery Code of Conduct. So we sit here and we talk about how they're robbing all of the money from Canadians, and to make this entire process stick, the Liberal government thinks that Canadians should pay for it $1.2 million. Am I the only one who thinks that sounds crazy? You can let me know down in the comments what you believe, but I think that just completely, how many groceries do we got to buy to catch up to $1.2 million? Right? Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. We would have been better off to get the grocery stores to just mail us coupons for stuff, and they would have paid for it that way. Unbelievable. Macaulay made the announcement one day after the news of Canada's major grocers had agreed to sign the voluntary code. So it's voluntary, they don't have to stick to it. And yet we're putting together another part of bureaucracy where we're going to put an adjudicator or a panel of 3 in there who won't have to pay for their lunch, who will get all kinds of perks, and who'll get $300,000 a year. For months, it appeared unclear whether all the major grocery stores would sign it, raising concern that the government might have to step in. But it doesn't matter. It's a voluntary code that has no teeth. So why are we spending money? Why are you wasting everybody's time? Everybody knows what to do. We need to break the monopoly. That's the only way that they're going to start to feel the pinch. We need to stop allowing corporations to make food in cheap countries like Mexico, where the labor is bad, not cheap, and moving them into Canada and selling them at inflated prices and adding carbon tax to locally grown food, which makes it super duper expensive. We need to stop championing the grocery chain and start championing the small markets. That's my opinion. You can leave me your opinion down in the comments. I think that this entire thing is a waste of our time. $1.2 million on an adjudicator. Okay, so like always, to save the best for last, retail sales are down 0.8% in May as consumers reined in spending. Now, remember April when Chrystia Freeland was running around saying how the interest rate had come down 0.25% and that everybody was going to be saved. Well, now inflation has gone back up at least 3 points. It's at 2.9, and at that time it was at 2.7. So inflation is back up 2 points. In addition to that, spending is down 0.8%, which is, you might not think it's much, but it's, when we're talking about the Canadian market, it's billions of dollars. Canadians reined in their spending in May as retail sales dropped 0.8%, weighed down by the decrease of grocery and alcohol sale retailers. Statistics Canada reported on Friday. Now, appreciate Canada has May 2-4, and the amount of holidays and the amount of alcohol that gets traditionally purchased in May, along with all of the barbecues. And in May, they were saying that the grocery stores and the beer stores were not selling, or whatever, the liquor stores were not selling any booze because people don't have the extra money. And that's worse than a shrinking expenditure. That's a shrinking economy, which is what the Conservatives have been talking about the whole time. Sales were lower in 8 of the 9 subsectors it tracks, the agency said, bringing overall retail sales down to $66.1 billion for the month. 8 out of 9. I like this paragraph here where it says, the declines in both overall and core retail sales were worse than expected and broadly offset gains seen in April, said CIBC senior economist Andrew in a note. So all of the stuff that Chrystia Freeland was running around screaming about, banging on a drum, saying her plan is working, it seems that her plan is not working. And I'm sure that I have a video where I said that it wouldn't work, and by July we would know. Now, this is May's numbers, and if May's numbers are bad, June's numbers are going to be worse. I can tell you that unemployment is up. Employment has just gone flatlined. And worse, what they don't want to tell you is that young men are not finding work, so that's less spending. That's the thing, right? Young men, they are the ones that spend money frivolously. I mean, young women spend money, I get it, but what I'm saying is that when you talk about food and alcohol, when you talk about restaurants, you are talking about that kind of drive, right? You're talking about a guy who will go to the restaurant, buy a beer, that kind of stuff, and those sales are down. So it's all connected. He added sluggish retail trends give the Bank of Canada one more reason to continue cutting benchmark interest rates over the next week. The central bank is expected to make an announcement on its overnight rate on July 24th. Making the announcement doesn't mean that they'll cut the rate. I read another article where they're saying that they have a lot of land tied up in borrowed money. And there was a story about in Winnipeg where a guy bought a building and literally changed all the locks and just threw everybody out. I mean, I couldn't believe what country does that guy live in where he thinks he can just walk in, change all the locks and throw you out on the street along with all of your furnishings. Is this the Canada you want? This is the Canada that Chrystia Freeland, Justin Trudeau, Anita Anand, Sean Fraser, this is the Canada they're building. Sales at food and beverage retailers posted a 1.9% decrease, so nearly 2% at food and beverage retailers, which is, taverns and bars and stuff like that. Sales at building material and garden equipment and supply retailers fell 2.7%, and sales at general merchandise retailers declined 1%. Sales at building material and garden equipment supply dealers fell 2.7%. How can that be when we're supposed to be building, build? How can the retailers that are supplying all of the stuff to build these homes be losing money because we're not building home, because people are not making renovations, because people are not making the adjustments, because people don't have the money? And anything that the federal liberals are trying to tell you are not supported by the numbers. In another twist of fate, Justin Trudeau bought a $9 million condominium for speculation is one of his girlfriends. $9 million. Do you feel like he's in touch with you? You feel like he's rolling up his sleeves and got your back? Anyway, I'll cover that in another episode. I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you next time.